the overview of my workshop. I'll be discussing how the admissions process changed. What should you students focus on while in high school? What do college admissions officers consider when evaluating college applications? And how has the college admissions process changed since 2020? Next. How has the undergraduate admissions process changed? Next. First and foremost, there's a difference between fit versus name and rankings. Fit is when a student's determined what are the individual elements that they would like in the college or university that they're going to apply for, and do those factors match up to the school. So fit has to do with what size, small, medium, or large of an undergraduate population, the location, specific majors, different types of extracurricular activities, if they want Division I sports or clubs, where our students live, requirements, minors, study abroad. So there's all those different factors, which are many, versus picking a college based on a name and how it's ranked in US World Report. So in my practice, I focus exclusively on fit, because finding a student's fit better ensures a more positive collegiate experience. The next is student demonstrated interest. What this means is, how has your student connected with the individual school or college? Have they reached out to admissions? Have they attended virtual or in-person events? Have they gone to when the admissions representative comes to the high school? Have they attended those functions? Have they reached out to alumni? There are colleges that track demonstrated interest and use that as a criteria as part of their admissions process. This is done because the more students demonstrate interest, the more likely it is that the student feels connected, a fit to the university, and if offered admissions, they may come. Unfortunately, the college admissions process is a business, and the business is to ensure that each individual college or university fills their incoming freshman class. And so that's why many colleges take demonstrated interest into account. Student engagement. That has to do with what your student is doing in grades 9 through 12, be it in-school activities, out-of-school activities, sports, starting a club, doing student research, engaging in sports within the high school exterior. So what have they done over these 4 years? The college admissions process only focuses on activities from 9th through 12th grade. Anything prior to 9th grade is not included on the application. Standardized testing has changed significantly since COVID started. So for the class of 2021, everybody was test optional, all colleges, because no one had the opportunity to sit for an SAT or ACT test, because the vast majority, if not almost all, high schools, secondary schools were closed and people were learning virtually. As students came back to school, in-person classes, colleges have adjusted. So standardized testing is available, but what colleges found out was that they still maintain quality applications while not using an ACT, SAT, AP scores, or IB scores. So many schools remain test optional. So that puts more of an emphasis on your grades and the difficulty by which your student challenges themselves. As I explained before, test optional, there's a website, fairtest.org. It does list those schools that are test optional, but I do caution everybody to go to the individual school, because Fair Test does not, once a school applies to be test optional, indicates that I do not know what kind of follow-up they do throughout the years. So you should always go to the individual college or university website, look under admissions into testing, and they will explain specifically what their policy is. If they require a test, if they don't, if they require you to send AP or IB scores, they will be very specific about that. The cost of college. Over the last decade, the cost of college has skyrocketed. Even in-state schools like the University of Maryland, for all of you, which would be an in-state school, that can be $25,000 to $30,000 a year as an in-state student. So sometimes it can be more cost effective to go to a school, either a private or a public school out of state, if your student is awarded merit money, which is based on grades and or sometimes standardized test scores. Merit money is free money. It's usually reoccurring amount over the 4 years. There can be stipulations about maintaining a certain GPA and those types of things, but it's really important to consider cost as one of your student's factors and to speak to your student early on in the process, like can be as early as the latter part of elementary school, as to what your ability to pay or not pay will be. So the student does understand what their financial liability and responsibility will be early on. And so there's no surprises when they're making that final decision senior year of high school. Next, please. What should your student focus on in high school? Next. First and foremost, create an individual high school course plan that includes the courses that challenge and interest you. I use a standard chart. I literally give students a piece of paper. It has 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and then it has the requirements that are needed to graduate from MCPS or from the high school that they attend. So you would have your core subjects: English, math, social studies, foreign language, and science. Included also on that would be the requirements for health, the requirements for physical PE, and health and, technology. And then they plot out the courses that they're going to take 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade based on the course guide that the high school gives them in 8th grade. It's all done in pencil, or it can be done on a computer. And so every year you reevaluate it. It's a really good tool because it ensures that your student will meet all the graduation requirements. So there'll be no surprises come senior year. And it also allows the students to start to sort of visualize the courses that they're interested in. It could lead to a potential major in college. And you can actually track the rigor. So obviously, when you start in 9th grade, your rigor being if you take an on-grade level in honors or an AP or IB class would be different than by your last year. So colleges really do look at how the individual student has challenged themselves based on what's offered at the high school. It's important to develop developing and utilizing strong organizational, interpersonal, and study skills. This obviously can start before high school, allowing your student to be in charge of their own academic responsibilities. Do they have a system when they come home? Do they, take a break? When do they do their studying? Where do they do their studying? How do they communicate when they need help? All those types of things. It's important to practice the skills while they're with you in your home so that they'll be able to do it independently when they go to college. It's also important to culminate summer plans that complement and enhance your students' interest. When you apply to college, you will have to write college essays. So the best way to have interesting essays is to make sure that your student is engaged during the summer, doing whatever they enjoy. If it's participating in a swim team, working at a job, doing volunteer work, going to sleepaway camp, whatever entices and excites them, but they should be doing something. I do understand over the last couple of years, summer plans as well as activities in schools have been altered because of the pandemic. But over the last year and a half, many students have had opportunities as things are opening up, but also creating their own situations where if they're unable to engage in person, they've been able to do things like virtually that can also be utilized on their application. It's most important for your student to develop a positive relationship with his or her or their high school guidance counselor. Why is that? Every guidance counselor will write a letter of recommendation for their advisee. The guidance counselor letter of recommendation is highly regarded by colleges and universities. If your student has a positive relationship with a guidance counselor, the guidance counselor knows who they are, then that would be more likely that they will be writing their recommendation before those that they don't really know well. There are high schools in MCPS where guidance counselors have 500, 600, 800 students. So it really is to the benefit of those students that the guidance counselors know well because if you want to be at the beginning of when they're writing letters as opposed to the end. But also guidance counselors have a depth of knowledge, not only about the school, about teachers, about courses, but through their years, they've, some of them have met college admissions folks, depending on what their responsibilities are. They certainly know well within the individual teachers and the programs within the school, so they have a plethora of information. And I strongly recommend to all of my clients that they spend time with their guidance counselor, even if it's just once or twice a year, going in and catching up, or before you register for your new classes for the upcoming new school year, you just go in and talk to them about what you're thinking of doing, so that they speak with you, give you some advice, remember your name, your face, and you have a connection. Next, please. It's also important to foster positive relationships with teachers for two reasons. Most colleges do require up to 2 teacher recommendations. Some can be very specific. If you're an engineer or otherwise a STEM major, they usually will want to see a science or a math teacher as part of one of those 2. But also teachers, like guidance counselors, have a lot of knowledge. Some teachers have exciting and really interesting activities outside of school, and getting to know them may give you the opportunity to work with them in different capacities. And they're really good resources just about registering for classes and talking about your interest. And they may turn your student on to a class at your high school that you were unaware of. Identifying and engaging in extracurricular activities in school and in the community. As I said before, colleges want to see students that do well academically, but are also engaged in their community and in their school. That is for 2 reasons. One, an engaged student, someone who has done this in high school, is more likely to continue doing that in some capacity when you get to college. All colleges are required to report retention rates after freshman year. So it's more likely for a student to want to remain at the school versus transferring if they feel engaged and having a positive experience. So if a student is doing these things in high school, it's sometimes easier for them to continue doing similar activities, or at least the understanding of balancing the school to social experience. Determining, registering, and preparing for required standardized tests. As I said, standardized testing has changed dramatically over the last years because of the COVID-19. However, that being said, there are schools that are now requiring it. So depending on what math level you're at, which is really determines when you are capable of starting to try, taking an SAT or ACT. It's usually based on where you are at math. So if you're accelerated in math, there are students who are able to take an SAT or ACT and do well in, freshman or sophomore year, as opposed to starting in junior year. But it's important to plan it out like everything else. And especially if you're at a school that offers IB and AP courses, you'll be taking those exams at the end of the school year. And so understanding testing and how to put it within your student's individual schedule is really important, so that your student has the opportunity, if they desire, to test more than once if the first score is not to their liking, and it can be spread out over a longer period of time so that junior year is a little less stressful. Re-examining the student's high school course plan and making appropriate adjustments. I spoke about this earlier. It's important to write out that plan for all 4 years, and then in the late winter, early spring of each year, so 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade, to relook at that plan that you had and see if you want to add or subtract or replace different classes. And that way that stays current and fresh. Next, please. What is most important to college admissions officers when evaluating college applications? Next. This is a survey done by NACAC. They are a professional organization for colleges and universities. And if you can see, 2019 was the last time they did the survey because of COVID-19, but really things haven't changed. The only thing that's changed the most is the yellow line, which says admissions test scores. That was the ACT or SAT. And as I said, schools who have received record numbers of applications starting with a graduating class of 2021 are seeing that they're admitting qualified students regardless of that testing. So many of them have remained test optional, some have brought them back. But other than that, you see that the first 3 items are all academic. Your grades in your courses, your grades in your college prep courses, the strength of the curriculum. That's what it's really important that your student, to the best of their ability, challenge themselves. Not every student can be successful in an advanced class, an AP class, or an IB class, and that is okay. Your student just needs to challenge themselves to the best of their ability and comparing to no one else. Number 5, as you see, is that college the counselor recommendation. So it does hold a lot of weight. If you go down further, you'll see 2 down is the teacher recommendation. And of course, the essay is important because that shows colleges how you communicate your thought process, which is important. Followed by extracurricular activities and then the demonstrated interest. In MCPS, as you know, there is no class rank. So that is nothing. And then goes further, work, interview, portfolio. We don't take state exams in Maryland. And then the subject tests, the SAT subject tests have been dissolved. So that's irrelevant. But as you see, a lot of it is about courses and grades, what you did, and then recommendations. So that's something to keep in mind and to also discuss with your student early in the process. Next, please. How has the college admissions process changed since 2020? Next. As I spoke about, test optional. Currently, there's 1,800 plus colleges, U.S. colleges and universities that are test optional, meaning that a standardized test score, the SAT or ACT, or submitting AP or IB scores are not required as part of the admissions. And if the student decides to submit their application test optional, there is no detrimental outcome to that. But colleges that do require testing, you still need to submit. Holistic reviews. There was a lot of concern about how colleges, once COVID started, would review students when they didn't have test scores, because many colleges relied heavily on them, not only for admissions, but for merit money. And then they found out that it wasn't a problem. A holistic review means that you look at the sum of the total of everything that the student had, their extracurriculars, their recommendations, their course selections, and they were really able to still get highly qualified candidates who have been successful. Increases in the number of applications. Yesterday, I found out that the University of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, PA, had 75% increase in the number of students who have submitted applications as of yesterday. Pitt is a small number of school that actually has rolling admissions. So as soon as you submit your application and it's complete, they will review it and then render you an admissions decision. So a 75% increase over 1 year is quite significant. For the graduating class of 2021, as test optional, students applied to lots of schools that they wouldn't have because their test scores would not have made them competitive. So they thought that, I can apply anywhere, which is true. Most schools, there are many schools that have record number applications, but there is still, you still have to be qualified in the eyes of the college. So even though you don't have a test score, that, there are other factors that they can consider. As I said, the increases in the number of applications have been steady for the last couple of years. That's why it's really important to have a balanced list when you create your college list and to be realistic about it. Diversity has certainly always been an issue, but it's really come to the forefront. I think that was another outcome from COVID, which really shined a light on differences between equity and availability. And so colleges have, really tried to level the playing field more so to speak. Special admits like legacies, there are colleges that have ended legacies, which means if you had a parent or a sibling who attended and graduated from the school, if you applied to the school, you would have an advantage in the admissions process. There are colleges that have done away with that.